"Excuse me, sir. I think you might be in the wrong section. Economy is behind the curtain." The words were not a question. They never were. They landed the way a door sounds when someone slams it in your face, flat, final, and completely certain of itself. Diana Foster stood in the forward galley of Atlantic Airways Flight 884 with her hands clasped in front of her and a smile that had been practiced so many times it had stopped meaning anything at all. She looked at the man settling into seat 2A, and she had already decided everything she needed to decide. The dark navy sweater, the worn leather loafers, the absence of a designer watch or a logo bag or any of the other signals she had trained herself to read like a language. She read him in less than 3 seconds, and she issued her verdict without a flicker of doubt. She had no idea what she had just set in motion. What Diana Foster did not know, what no one on Flight 884 knew, was that in exactly 52 minutes she would be escorted off her own aircraft in zip-tie restraints. Her 18-year career with Atlantic Airways would be reduced to a federal case number. The badge she had spent 2 decades hiding behind would be meaningless. And the man she had just spoken to as though he were a problem to be managed would be the one signing the paperwork that ended everything she had built. 52 minutes. Not a long time at 35,000 feet, but long enough for the truth to do what it always does when it finally gets room to breathe. Before we go any further, where are you watching from right now? Drop your city in the comments below. We want to hear from you. And if you believe that quiet dignity always wins over loud arrogance, that the man who says the least in the room is sometimes the most powerful person in it, hit subscribe and give this video a like. Stories like this one deserve to be heard. Now let's go back to where this night actually started. Let's go back to the beginning. Chicago O'Hare International Airport, Terminal 3, a bitter Tuesday evening in November. The storm had been building since afternoon. By the time Flight 884 was ready to board, the massive glass windows of Terminal 3 were rattling with it, a deep, persistent shudder that ran through the walls and into the floor and into the bones of every delayed, irritated traveler sitting on the hard plastic chairs with their cold coffee and their dead phone batteries and their resigned expressions. The air smelled of floor wax and recycled anxiety. The departure boards flickered. Gate agents spoke into microphones with the careful, flattened calm of people who had been yelled at too many times to react to anything anymore. Gate K-17, Flight 884 to New York JFK, originally scheduled to depart at 7:05 p.m., now showing 7:40, then 7:55, then simply delayed. The passengers waiting in the boarding area had the particular energy of a crowd that has given up on controlling anything. Families with small children negotiated territory on the floor. Business travelers worked through laptops propped on rolling carry-ons. A young woman in row 3 of the waiting seats had her phone raised and was already filming her own commentary about the delay for her followers. Nobody paid her much attention. Everyone in an airport filmed something. A few seats away from the boarding door, a man sat reading nothing, looking at nothing in particular, perfectly still in the middle of all of it. Dark navy sweater, dark jeans, worn leather loafers, a slim charcoal duffel bag at his feet. A small black moleskin notebook visible in the breast pocket of his jacket. He was not checking his phone every 30 seconds the way most people did. He was not complaining to the person next to him or craning toward the gate agent's podium for updates. He simply sat in the noise and the cold and the delay, and he waited with the specific patience of someone who has learned that airports, like most things, will move when they are ready and not a second before. His name was Marcus Webb, and the storm outside was nothing at all, compared to what was about to happen once this aircraft finally lifted into the sky. The snowstorm pressed hard against the terminal glass. The boarding door lights flickered once. Then the gate agent's voice came over the intercom, weary but professional. Atlantic Airways Flight 884 to New York, JFK. We are now ready to begin priority boarding. Marcus Webb picked up his slim charcoal duffel. He stood. He waited his turn. Outside, the first real gusts of the night hit the terminal windows with a sound like someone throwing gravel. The storm was arriving in full. Inside Gate K-17, passengers began shuffling toward the door with the collective shuffling resignation of people ready to simply be somewhere else. None of them knew that before this flight was over, one of them would be arrested. One would lose everything, and the quiet man in the navy sweater would give a masterclass in what real power actually looks like. Not loud, not decorated, not announced, just documented, patient. Waiting, 52 minutes. The clock was already running. Marcus Webb was 54 years old, and he walked through the world the way experienced pilots move through turbulence, without panic, without rigidity, with a kind of fluid, controlled calm that took most people decades to develop and some people never managed at all. He had silver at his temples, closely cropped. His face was the face of a man who had spent a very long time making decisions under pressure. Not hardened by it, not worn down by it, but shaped by it, the way good wood is shaped by careful hands. There were lines around his eyes that came from squinting through cockpit windows at 10,000 sunrises and just as many storms. There was a steadiness in his gaze that was not arrogance and not coldness, but something quieter than either. The gaze of a man who had learned that most situations, if you wait long enough and watch carefully enough, will tell you exactly what they are. He was not a large man in the way people sometimes imagine authority. He did not fill a room with volume or size. He filled it with something harder to name, a quality of attention, of presence, of absolute internal stillness that made other people unconsciously lower their voices when he was near. Not because he demanded it, simply because he was the kind of person around whom noise seemed to realize it was unnecessary. He wore a dark navy sweater, dark jeans, and a pair of leather loafers that had seen better days and showed it. No watch, no logo, nothing that announced itself. His slim charcoal duffel contained a change of clothes, a toiletry bag, a thermos of black coffee that was now cold, and a sealed envelope that he had not opened yet because he was saving it for the flight. His breast pocket held the black moleskin notebook and a single silver pen. To anyone looking at him in the priority boarding lane at Gate K-17, he was simply a man. Well-kept, quiet, unremarkable in the particular way of someone who has spent a long time choosing not to be remarkable unless the moment requires it. To the Federal Aviation Administration and to the executive leadership of Atlantic Airways' Marcus Webb was something considerably more specific. 22 years as a senior captain, more than 22,000 flight hours logged across 4 continents, a record that contained not a single major incident, not a single failed check ride, not a single formal complaint from a crew member or a passenger. He had flown Boeing 737s, 757s, 767s, and 777s. He had landed in conditions that would make most people's hands shake just to read about. He had commanded flights during medical emergencies at altitude, during catastrophic weather diversions, during the particular kind of quiet mechanical crisis that requires a pilot to do everything correctly within a very narrow window of time with no room to get it wrong. 3 weeks ago, 22 days to be precise, the CEO of Atlantic Airways had called Marcus into his corner office on the 14th floor of the airline's Chicago headquarters, closed the door, and placed a thick manila folder on the desk between them. The folder contained 14 months of complaint records, not the routine complaints. Late flights, cold food, missed connections. These were different. These were specific. They came from different routes, different departure cities, different aircraft. But they described the same thing over and over in different words. Passengers of color in premium cabins being treated as though they did not belong there. Being questioned about their tickets after the gate had already confirmed them. Being relocated. Being made to feel at 35,000 feet with nowhere to go that some invisible line had been crossed simply by sitting down in a seat they had paid for. The complaints had been investigated internally. 3 times. Each time, the findings were inconclusive. The flight attendants named in the reports had spotless personnel files and practiced answers and 18 years of institutional goodwill. The complaints were noted, flagged, filed. Nothing changed. Marcus had read the folder quietly for 6 minutes while his CEO waited. Then he had looked up. "I will need to travel in civilian clothes," Marcus had said, "and I will need scheduling to book me under the standard executive code, not a crew designation. If they know I am coming, we learn nothing." The CEO had nodded. "When do you start?" Tonight's flight was Marcus's 4th undercover audit. The first 3 had produced notes worth keeping, but nothing worth escalating. Minor service issues, correctable behavior, nothing that rose to the level of what the complaint folder described. He had flown economy on a Tuesday morning to Miami and observed a mostly unremarkable crew. He had sat in first class on a Thursday afternoon to Boston and found nothing to write in his notebook except that the coffee was genuinely excellent. Flight 884 to New York was different. He had felt it before he even reached the gate. The specific way the gate agent had not looked at him when she scanned his boarding pass. The way the priority boarding lane had an invisible current of assumption running through it. He shook it off. He waited. He walked down the jet bridge with his slim duffel over one shoulder, his moleskin notebook in his pocket, his silver pen clicked and ready. At the entrance to the first-class cabin, Marcus paused for one brief second. His eyes moved quickly across the space. Not a passenger's idle look, but the fast, professional scan of a man who had spent decades reading cabins. Galley position, jump seat location, overhead bin capacity. The small automatic inventory of someone for whom aircraft are not vehicles, but environments with rules and rhythms that can be read like a face. Seat 2A window, left side. He located it. He began walking toward it. He did not yet see Diana Foster, but Diana Foster had already seen him. He did not know that yet either. He settled into 2A, lifted his duffel into the overhead bin with one easy motion, sat down, and exhaled. The leather seat received him. The ambient lighting of the first-class cabin was warm. The engine hum of the auxiliary power was low and steady. For the first time in what felt like a very long day, Marcus Webb closed his eyes. He was looking forward to nothing more complicated than 2 hours of sleep. He had not yet buckled his seatbelt when the sharp, practiced throat clearing sounded above him. Diana Foster had been a flight attendant for 18 years, and in that time she had developed the particular expertise of someone who is very good at a job they have quietly redefined to suit themselves. She knew the rule book. She could quote regulations with precision. She knew which passengers needed what, which seat configurations required, which safety briefings, which menu items contained which allergens. She had survived 3 airline mergers, 2 route restructurings, and 1 catastrophic system failure that grounded half the domestic fleet for 6 hours on a holiday weekend. She was competent in the way that people who are motivated by something other than service often are. Efficient, observant, technically correct. The complaints in her personnel file told a different story. Not many. Diana was careful, and careful people do not often leave obvious evidence. But there were 5 in 18 years, and they all said the same thing in different language. A passenger who had felt watched rather than welcomed. A traveler who had been asked for documentation that other passengers in the same cabin were not asked for. A couple who had found their confirmed seats given to another passenger and been told it was a computer error and been relocated to the rear, and who had noticed quite pointedly that the passengers who replaced them did not look like them. Each complaint had been investigated. Each investigation had found insufficient evidence for disciplinary action. Diana was articulate under questioning. She had colleagues who would speak well of her. She had the great institutional advantage of being known and trusted in a system that moved slowly and preferred not to find what it was not looking for. She stood in the forward galley of Flight 884 at 6:58 p.m., arranging the champagne tray with the focused care of a woman who believed that her appearance and her environment were extensions of her authority. Blonde hair pulled into a severe French twist, without a strand displaced. Red lipstick applied with the precision of someone who had done it 1,000 times and still treated each application as though it mattered. Her uniform was pressed within an inch of its life. When the first passengers began boarding, Diana transformed. She became the version of herself she had been performing for 18 years, warm, professional, attentive. She greeted a man in a tailored gray suit with his name and the information that his preferred sparkling water was already poured. She helped an elderly couple with their overhead bag and inquired gently about their final destination. She adjusted the temperature at the forward thermostat by 2 degrees, without being asked, simply because she had noticed the elderly woman rubbing her arms. She was very good at the performance when the audience was the right kind of audience. Marcus Webb stepped through the forward door and turned left into the first-class cabin, and Diana Foster's performance paused. It was not a dramatic pause. It was not obvious. It lasted perhaps 1.5 seconds. A slight stillness, a brief recalibration the way a computer hesitates when it encounters a file it does not recognize. Her eyes moved over him in the fast, practiced way she had developed over years of doing it without appearing to do it. Navy sweater, dark jeans, worn loafers, no watch, charcoal duffel, nothing that matched the mental catalog she kept of what a premium passenger was supposed to look like. She did not greet him. She watched him lift his duffel into the overhead bin and settle into seat 2A. She watched him close his eyes. She watched him the way you watch a package you did not expect to arrive at a door you thought you controlled. Then she walked over to him. The smile was back. The honeyed professional warmth was back. But underneath it, underneath the practiced lean and the tilted head and the carefully calibrated concern, there was something else entirely. The absolute unexamined certainty that she was about to correct a mistake. "Excuse me, sir. I think you might be in the wrong section. Economy is behind the curtain." Marcus opened his eyes. He looked at her steadily. "I am in the right section. Seat 2A. Thank you." Diana's smile did not waver, but her eyes sharpened. "May I see your boarding pass?" Marcus felt the familiar weight of the moment, the particular specific gravity of being asked to prove yourself after you have already been admitted. He had felt it before. He knew precisely what it was. He pulled his phone from his pocket, unlocked it, and held the screen up. Bold text, clear, Atlantic Airways Flight 884, Seat 2A, First Class. Marcus Webb. Diana stared at it. She did not apologize. Her jaw tightened by a fraction. "Please ensure your bag is fully pushed back in the bin," she said, her tone shifting from honeyed to clipped. "We need room for our premium passengers." She turned and walked back to the galley. Marcus watched her go. His expression did not change. He reached into his breast pocket, withdrew the black moleskin notebook, and clicked the silver pen open. He turned to the first blank page. At the top, in precise block letters, he wrote 4 words. Flight 884, F.A. Diana Foster. Below it, 1908. He said nothing. He did not need to. In seat 3C across the aisle, Camila Reyes had watched the entire exchange. She was 28 years old with dark hair and quick eyes, and the habit developed over 4 years of building a travel lifestyle platform, of noticing things other people missed. She had 800,000 followers on Instagram and on social media, and she had come to understand that her audience trusted her precisely because she showed them real things. Not staged, not filtered, not constructed, just real. She had filmed the first part of the boarding process already. The routine content, she always captured the window seat view and the champagne tray and the ambient luxury of first class. But the exchange between the flight attendant and the man in 2A had made her lower her phone and simply watch. She did not film it, not yet, but she kept her phone in her hand and she kept her attention on the forward galley, and she kept watching. In seat 4, a Jonah Strauss 34 had a compact documentary camera in the shoulder bag under his seat. He traveled with it the way most people travel with a novel. It was simply always there because the world had the habit of producing moments worth preserving, usually when you least expected them. He had been shooting a documentary about air travel for 8 months. He had 200 hours of footage of gates and runways and the specific boredom of delay. He had almost nothing that surprised him. He and Camilla had not spoken. But when Diana walked back to the galley and Marcus Webb opened his notebook and wrote without speaking, Jonah and Camilla happened to look across the aisle at each other at exactly the same moment. Neither of them said a word. The boarding continued. Economy filled row by row behind the curtain. The gate agent announced the 20-minute weather hold. Outside, the snow was no longer approaching. It had arrived. Preston Hale entered the first-class cabin the way certain men enter every room, as though the room had been waiting for him and was lucky he had arrived. He was 51 years old, broad through the shoulders, red-faced in the way of a man who had been eating and drinking well for several consecutive decades and saw no reason to change the pattern. His Brooks Brothers suit was expensive and rumpled simultaneously, the jacket creased in the way that happens when you have been wearing it since morning and doing important things in it all day, and you want people to be able to see that. He was speaking into a wireless earpiece as he boarded loudly about someone who had apparently failed to arrange his car in New York to his satisfaction. He smelled of expensive bourbon at a distance of 4 feet. He looked at his boarding pass. He looked at the row. He looked at seat 2B, the aisle seat, and his face arranged itself into a scowl that was practiced enough to suggest it had a great deal of experience. Then he looked at seat 2A. Then he looked at Marcus Webb sitting quietly in seat 2A with his notebook and his pen and his eyes closed again. Preston's hand came up and his fingers actually snapped a sharp flat crack in the warm cabin air aimed at the galley, aimed at Diana. "Hey, we have got a situation here." Diana was across the cabin in moments. The shift in her demeanor was instant and total. The practiced warmth she had withheld from Marcus now deployed with full voltage for Preston Hale. "Mr. Hale, welcome back. What can I do for you?" "I booked a window seat," Preston said with the tone of a man explaining something obvious to someone who should have already fixed it. "Window? I always book window. I specifically..." He gestured again at the row at Marcus, the gesture casual and dismissive in the way of someone who has spent 51 years treating other people's presence as an inconvenience. "I have got 2B. Aisle. I do not do aisles. I completely understand, Mr. Hale." Diana's voice was warm, sympathetic, the voice of someone committed to solving a problem that was not hers to solve. "Let me see what I can do." She turned, and her eyes found Marcus in 2A. There are moments when something shows itself clearly like a card turned face up. Diana Foster had been managing her bias for 18 years with practiced discretion, keeping it below the surface, maintaining enough professional cover that it was always deniable, always explainable, always something other than what it was. But in this moment, with Preston Hale's entitlement behind her and Marcus Webb's quiet presence in front of her, something shifted in her expression. Not dramatically, just enough for the people watching to see it. The unspoken certainty that had been simmering since Marcus first stepped into the cabin had found its vehicle. She approached row 2. Her back was mostly turned to Preston, presenting a wall of administrative authority toward Marcus. The honeyed tone was gone entirely. What replaced it was clipped official final. "Sir, I need you to gather your belongings." Marcus opened his eyes. He looked at her with the same steadiness he had offered her the first time. "Why is that?" "There has been a ticketing error." Diana did not hesitate, not for a fraction of a second. There was a double booking on this seat. "Mr. Hale is the confirmed holder of 2A. You will need to vacate the seat immediately." Marcus said nothing for a moment. Then, "A double booking, after my boarding pass scanned green at the gate. Systems have errors." Diana's voice was clipped impatient, utterly certain of itself. Mr. Haley is a Platinum Elite member, and his reservation takes precedence. I have a seat available for you in the main cabin. Row 35. Preston leaned over from the aisle, smirking. Come on, buddy. You heard her. Time to head to the back. Marcus did not look at Preston. He kept his eyes on Diana. Calm, absolute. I am a deadheading crew member. This seat was assigned by Atlantic Airways crew scheduling for mandatory rest before an international command flight tomorrow morning. I am not moving. Something moved behind Diana's eyes. Not doubt. She was not capable of doubt in this moment. It was closer to irritation that the problem was proving less simple than she had expected. I know every pilot based out of this hub, she said. You are not on my crew manifest, not under any standard code. Check under the executive designation tier, Marcus said evenly. My profile was updated 3 weeks ago when I transferred back from the European division. I am not checking anything. Her voice rose slightly, not enough to be called a scene, but enough for the passengers around them to register it. I am the lead flight attendant on this aircraft, and my authority in this cabin is final. You will gather your belongings and move to row 35, or I will contact Port Authority Police and have you removed from this aircraft before we push back. The choice is yours. You have 30 seconds. The cabin around them had gone quietly alert. The ambient boarding noise continued behind the curtain, but in the forward section, the specific quality of silence that gathers around a confrontation had settled over the rows. An elderly woman in 4C had stopped arranging her cardigan. A man in 5A had lowered his phone. Camilla Reyes in 3C did not lower hers. Marcus Webb looked at Diana Foster for 3 full seconds. He was not performing patience. He genuinely had it, the deep reserves of it that accumulate over 22 years of making consequential decisions while other people around you are losing their composure. He ran the calculation in the way he ran all calculations, fast, thorough, without sentiment. The optics of a confrontation here, the risk to tomorrow's international command flight and the 300 passengers depending on it, the long game versus the short one. He knew which one produced outcomes that lasted. The trap is already set, he thought. She does not know it yet, but she is walking straight into it. He unbuckled his seatbelt. He stood. He reached into the overhead bin and pulled down his slim charcoal duffel with one unhurried motion. He looked at Diana with an expression that gave nothing away and said nothing more. Then he walked. Camilla Reyes went fully live the moment Marcus stood up. She angled her phone low, keeping it subtle, narrating in a quiet voice. A man just showed a confirmed first-class boarding pass. The flight attendant told him it was a ticketing error. He told her he was crew. She threatened him with police. And now, she tracked Marcus's movement with her camera. He is walking to economy, and he has not raised his voice once. Not once. She typed the caption one-handed. What I'm watching at the gate. This is wrong. Hashtag Atlantic Airways. Hashtag flight shame. Jonas Strauss had his documentary camera out of the shoulder bag before Marcus reached the curtain. He was not filming dramatically. No dramatic zooms, no narration. He simply framed Diana's face as Marcus passed. Her expression, the micro-satisfaction of it. The way her chin lifted fractionally as she turned back to Preston Hale, already pulling her arm out to gesture him warmly toward seat 2A. In the 4th row, the gray-haired woman in 4C, Ruth Kimball, 72, traveling alone, said quietly but clearly to no one in particular, "That is not right. That man did nothing wrong." Diana did not acknowledge her. She was already leaning toward Preston with her warmest smile. "Here you are, Mr. Hale. Can I get you started with something before we push back?" Marcus Webb walked the full length of the aircraft. Every row, back straight, face absolutely unreadable. His loafers were quiet on the carpet. He did not hurry. In row 12, a man in a window seat shook his head slowly as Marcus passed. In row 19, a woman looked up from her book, then looked quickly at the floor, uncomfortable with what she had seen, and more uncomfortable with the fact that she had not said anything. As Marcus crossed the threshold of the curtain, Preston Hale's voice came from seat 2, loud and satisfied. "Thanks for keeping it warm, Chief." Marcus did not turn around. He did not slow down. He did not give the comment the dignity of recognition. He found row 35, middle seat. The lavatories were directly across. The smell was the particular chemical smell of airline bathrooms. Not terrible, simply relentless. The seat was narrow in the way that middle seats on a Boeing 737 are narrow, which is to say that a man of Marcus's frame had approximately 2 inches of armrest on each side and a tray table that, when deployed, would rest against his thighs. To his left, a teenager with earbuds leaking tinny music. To his right, a young woman in her early 30s, dark circles under her eyes, a sleeping 8-month-old daughter pressed against her chest like a small, warm anchor. Marcus set his duffel under the seat in front of him. He sat down. He pulled the moleskin notebook from his breast pocket and the silver pen from beside it. He opened the notebook to the page where he had written 4 words and a time. He wrote 1914, passenger profiling, fraudulent claim of double booking. No such error exists in Atlantic reservation system, deadheading crew member relocated, protocol violated, motivation bias. The pen moved without anger, without hurry. Every word was a brick. Camila Reyes had been building her platform for 4 years on a simple principle: show people the world as it actually is. Not the curated version, not the version that had been smoothed and filtered and rearranged to look aspirational. The actual world. The moment on the train where a stranger does something quietly beautiful. The time at the hotel desk when a clerk speaks to someone in a way that makes you understand immediately that the world still has a very long way to go. Real things. Honest things. She had 800,000 followers because they trusted her. And they trusted her because she had never once manufactured a moment. This moment did not need manufacturing. 6 minutes after she went live, she had 600 concurrent viewers. The comments were arriving faster than she could read them. Someone find out who that flight attendant is. This is discrimination caught on camera. Tag Atlantic Airways right now. Someone from the back row of her first-class view had captured the moment Diana pointed Preston toward seat 2A and was sharing it across 3 platforms simultaneously. Camilla kept her voice low and steady, her phone angled toward the economy cabin where Marcus had settled into row 35. She narrated in the factual, quiet tone that her audience knew meant she was not performing outrage. She was simply documenting something real. A man presented a confirmed first-class boarding pass. The flight attendant told him it was a ticketing error. He identified himself as crew. She threatened him with police if he did not move. He moved. He walked the entire length of this aircraft without saying another word. And right now he is sitting in the middle seat in the last row next to the bathrooms, and I am going to keep filming until I know he is okay. She lowered the camera slightly so that Marcus was in the background of the frame. Not intrusive, not exploitative, just present. A man sitting in a cramped middle seat with a small notebook open on his tray table, writing in precise block letters, completely still. The view count climbed 900. 1, 400. 2, 100. In seat 4, a Jonah Strauss was not live streaming. He was doing something more deliberate. He pulled his phone alongside his compact camera, opened his social media, and began composing a post. He was a filmmaker and a trained documentarian, and he understood that how you presented something mattered as much as what you presented. He was not trying to generate outrage. He was simply putting facts in order. He wrote, "What I just watched happen on Atlantic Airways Flight 884 out of Chicago O'Hare." A black man in a confirmed first-class seat was told by a flight attendant that there had been a ticketing error. He showed his digital boarding pass. It was valid. He identified himself as airline crew. She threatened him with police. He was moved to row 35, middle seat near the lavatories, so that a white passenger could have his window seat. I have the video. He posted it and put his phone face down on his tray table. He picked it back up 20 seconds later because it was already buzzing. By the time the aircraft pushed back from the gate, the post had 4,000 shares. By the time they reached the de-icing queue, it had 11,000. The hashtag Camila had attached, flight shame, was trending in Chicago, then in New York, then in Atlanta, where Atlantic Airways had its largest hub and where a great number of people had a great many feelings about how their airline handled things. The Atlantic Airways official account had not responded. It would not respond for another 3 hours. By then it would be far too late for a response to matter. In row 35, Marcus was aware of none of this. He did not have his phone out. He had no way of knowing that the young woman with the camera in 3C had been filming that a documentary filmmaker in 4A was building a post that a teenager in the seat to his left had uploaded a video that was currently at 34,000 views and climbing. He was simply sitting in a cramped middle seat in the last row of a delayed aircraft notebook open, watching the economy cabin with the practiced attention of a man doing his job. The young woman to his right was managing the particular exhausted mathematics of solo travel with an infant. The calculation of which hand holds the baby and which hand holds the bottle and which hand crucially does not exist to handle the diaper bag that has slipped under the seat. The baby, a girl 8 months old with the specific expression of an infant who is not certain about any of this, was beginning to make the preliminary sounds that precede actual crying. Her name, Marcus, would learn later was Lydia Morales, 31 years old, making this trip alone because her mother was sick in New York and the tickets had cost more than she had told her husband. She had not slept in 22 hours and she had 2 more to go, and she was holding it together through the specific force of will that parents of small children develop of necessity. Marcus watched her for a moment. Then he reached into the breast pocket of his jacket, beside the notebook where he always kept them, and produced a sealed packet of peppermints. He held them out to her without fanfare. She looked at him. He showed her with a brief, quiet gesture how to let the baby suck the mint gently during the pressure change. "It helps their ears," he said. "Mine used to do this too." Lydia stared at him, then at the mints. Then she said, voice very low, "Thank you. I'm sorry she is so loud." "She is doing exactly what she is supposed to do," Marcus said. "So are you." Lydia did not say anything after that, but some of the tension in her shoulders released by a fraction, and she let herself exhale, and she pressed her cheek against the top of Ava's head, and she stopped trying quite so hard to disappear. On Marcus's left, Finn Castillo, 17, had lowered his earbuds without taking them out, a teenager's technique for listening without appearing to. He had seen the whole boarding incident from the moment he settled into his seat. He had filmed it on his phone from behind the seat pocket, propped at an angle the way teenagers film things, instinctively without calculation, because they live in a world where documenting something real is simply what you do. He had 12,000 followers on his video platform. He was not famous. He was just a kid from Chicago going to see his grandmother in Queens. But he posted the clip with a caption that was 17 words, and absolutely direct man with a valid first-class ticket got moved to the back for no reason. Explain Atlantic Airways. The video had 40,000 views before the aircraft reached the de-icing queue. In the forward cabin, Diana Foster was performing attentiveness for Preston Hale with complete committed focus. His champagne glass, his blanket, the temperature at his vent. He was loud, and he was drunk, and he was grateful for all of it, and Diana found in his gratitude the confirmation that she was good at her job. She did not think about the man in row 35. She had resolved the situation, and she had moved on. In seat 4C, Ruth Kimball sat with a blood pressure medication bottle in one hand and a dry glass in the other. She had asked for water 15 minutes ago. Diana had said the beverage cart would be around shortly. Ruth was 72, and she had been managing her blood pressure for 11 years, and she knew better than to miss a dose, but she also knew better than to make a fuss, so she sat quietly with the bottle and the empty glass, and she waited. Jonah Strauss in 4A noticed. He turned to Ruth. "May I help you with something, ma'am?" Ruth smiled the patient smile of a woman who has learned not to be a burden. "I just needed a glass of water for my medication. I am sure it is coming." Jonah looked at the forward galley where Diana was arranging Preston Hale's pillow. He looked back at Ruth. He called a passing junior flight attendant from the economy section. Rosa Delgado, dark-haired and quick-eyed, already moving with the practiced efficiency of someone who had done this flight 100 times. Rosa had water for Ruth in 40 seconds. Ruth took her medication. She said thank you 3 times. Jonah, added to his post-update elderly passenger in row 4, could not get water for her heart medication for 20 minutes. The flight attendant was adjusting the pillow for the man who took someone else's seat. Both things are true. Both things are being documented. #Atlantic Airways. That update had 18,000 shares within 12 minutes. The aircraft pushed back from the gate at 7:55 p.m., 25 minutes late. The de-icing process added another 20. The 737 sat on the tarmac in the thickening snow, and the cabin hummed with the auxiliary power, and Ava Morales finally surrendered to the peppermint and the pressure change and the warmth of her mother's chest, and fell asleep, and Marcus Webb opened his notebook to a fresh page and wrote one careful line. "Wait for the pressure," he wrote. "It always comes." 31 minutes into the flight. The seatbelt sign had chimed off 10 minutes ago. Economy had settled into the low, comfortable hum of a cabin at cruising altitude, the particular stillness that comes after the engines reach their steady note, and the ground is genuinely gone, and there is nothing left to do but be where you are. Ava Morales was asleep against her mother's chest, rising and falling with Lydia's breathing. Finn Castillo had his earbuds back in and his eyes half closed. The teenager's restless energy had gone quiet. Marcus sat very still with the notebook open on his tray table and the silver pen resting in his hand. Not writing, not reading. The pen rested between his fingers the way it always did when he was thinking. A physical habit, something to anchor the hands while the mind went somewhere. He was looking out the window. There was nothing to see. The black November sky. The slow, regular blink of the wing light. The absolute dark of altitude where there are no landmarks and no reference points, and the only way you know you are moving is the instruments in front of you that you have learned to trust absolutely. He was not looking at those things. He was looking at something that had happened 35 years ago in an airport terminal in Atlanta. The memory arrived the way it always arrived. Not with fanfare, not with the dramatic surge of a film moment. Quietly, the way turbulence arrives before you hear it. Marcus Webb was 19 years old. He is standing in the check-in area of Atlanta Hartsfield-Jackson Airport in the cadet blazer that Atlantic Airways had sent him 3 weeks ago along with the acceptance letter, the thickest, most consequential envelope he had ever held in his hands. He has read the letter 7 times. He has shown it to his mother, who cried. He has shown it to his father, who did not cry, but who went very quiet, and then put his hand on Marcus's shoulder and left it there for a long moment without speaking. One of 11 selected from over 2,000 applicants. He is the only black cadet in the cohort. He knows this because he has looked at the photographs on the program's website and counted. He is at the airline staff check-in counter because that is where the acceptance letter told him to go. He is early because his father taught him that being early is a form of respect, and he intends to respect everything about this. He has his acceptance letter in the breast pocket of the cadet blazer right over his heart, because that is where it belongs. The agent behind the counter is young white, barely looking up from her monitor. She glances at him, takes in the blazer with the Atlantic Airways logo on the breast, looks back at him. Her expression does not change. This area is for airline staff and priority members, sir. General check-in is that way. She is not rude. She is not hostile. She is simply completely certain. Marcus explains. He has his acceptance letter. He is a new cadet. He is supposed to be here. He shows her the letter. She looks at it. Not the way you look at a document when you are reading it. The way you look at a document when you have already decided what you think it is, and you are looking for confirmation. Her eyes move over it without landing on any of the words. Then her supervisor comes over. Older, efficient, a man who has processed 1,000 check-ins and can read a situation in 10 seconds. He takes one look at the letter, one look at Marcus, and says, "He is cleared, Melissa. Let him through." Melissa steps aside. She does not apologize. She moves to the next person in the line as if nothing happened. Marcus walks through the gate. He does not say anything. He carries the acceptance letter in the breast pocket of his blazer right over his heart, and he walks through the gate into the concourse, and something settles into place inside his chest. Not with anger, not with bitterness, but with a quiet, specific weight that he will carry for the rest of his career. He will learn every rule in this industry he promises himself, every regulation, every protocol, every procedure. He will know them better, more completely, more precisely, more absolutely, than anyone who ever looks at him the way that gate agent just looked at him. Not so he can use the knowledge as a weapon, so he can use it as a shield. So that the next time someone looks at him with that particular expression, he will have something more durable than anger to answer with. He will have facts. He will have documentation. He will have 22,000 flight hours and a federal badge and the unassailable record of a man who has spent 22 years doing his job exactly as it should be done. He walks through the gate. He finds his cohort. He sits down and he opens the handbook they have been issued and he begins to read. The second memory came without transition. This is how memory works at altitude. It does not ask permission. Marcus is 31. He is in uniform for the first time as a full captain. 4 gold stripes on the sleeve's peaked cap, the complete formal authority of someone who has earned a thing through a decade of precise, committed work. He is boarding an aircraft at JFK for his first international command flight. London Heathrow, a 777 with 287 passengers on the manifest. He is early. Of course he is early. He walks the jet bridge with the particular unhurried purpose of a man who knows exactly where he is going and why. At the cockpit door, a senior flight attendant, not Diana, someone long before Diana, someone whose name he has not thought of in 20 years, stops him. She is not rude. Her expression is simply that of someone encountering a variable that does not fit the pattern she expected. "Can I help you?" Marcus looks at her. He is wearing 4 gold stripes. He is carrying the captain's bag. He is standing at the cockpit door. There is only one reason any person stands at a cockpit door in 4 gold stripes carrying a captain's bag. He watches her arrive at the obvious conclusion. He watches the moment it lands. He watches the 2-second pause while her face rearranges itself from polite inquiry into something closer to the apology that does not come. She steps aside. 2 seconds. Marcus counted them then, and he can feel them, now 35 years old, in the capsule of a first-class cabin somewhere over the Midwest. 2 seconds is nothing. 2 seconds is a blink, is a breath, is the time it takes to decide something. 2 seconds is also accumulated over a career, a life. In the cockpit, settling into the captain's seat for the first time, his hands moving through the pre-flight checklist with the automatic precision of someone who has done this in simulators 100 times, but never with this weight, this reality, this morning air over New York. He made himself a promise. Every position he was ever given, would be used to make this industry better for the person who came after him. Not with noise, not with anger, which is useful for exactly nothing and burns itself out faster than fuel. With excellence, with documentation, with the patient, unshakable power of being absolutely right. He did not take action against that senior flight attendant for her 2-second pause. He could not have. She had done nothing actionable. But he never forgot her, and he never forgot the gate agent in Atlanta. And when the CEO of Atlantic Airways put a folder of complaints on the desk in front of him 22 days ago, he understood immediately what he was looking at. He had been looking at the same thing his entire career in different rooms on different days with different faces. The same 2-second pause, the same fast slide of assumption, the same certainty, so deep it did not even feel like a choice, that some people belonged and some people did not, and that the person doing the deciding always happened to be the one who belonged. He was not angry about it. He was simply done watching it happen. The wing light blinked against the black sky. Ava stirred in her sleep and made a small sound, and then was still again. Lydia's breathing was the slow rhythm of someone who had finally briefly given herself permission to rest. Marcus looked at them for a moment, something in his face, not soft exactly, settled, the expression of a man who knows why he is where he is and has made his peace with all of it. He picked up the silver pen. He wrote one line in the notebook under everything else he had written. He wrote it deliberately the way you write something you intend to keep. The line between authority and arrogance is visible under pressure. Wait for the pressure. It always comes. He underlined it once. He closed the notebook. He settled back into the cramped middle seat across from the lavatory and the chemical smell and the steady engine hum. He had all the time in the world. The seatbelt sign chimed off at 8:06 p.m., 14 minutes after takeoff. In the economy cabin of Atlantic Airways Flight 884, Rosa Delgado and Daniel Park began their service run within the acceptable window. One of 23 things Marcus Webb would note in his moleskin notebook before the flight was over. He watched them the way he always watched, with the peripheral attention of long practice, his eyes appearing to be directed out the window or at the page in front of him, while actually tracking everything in the cabin, with the complete automatic awareness of someone for whom observation is not an effort, but a reflex. Rosa Delgado was 29. She moved through the narrow economy aisle with the precise economy of motion of someone who had done this route 100 times and had developed the intelligence to make that repetition look like care. She did not rush. She did not perform warmth. She simply was warm, in the specific way of a person whose warmth is not a customer service technique, but a genuine quality that expresses itself equally in the attention she gave to a first-time flyer fumbling with a tray table, as in the speed with which she located an air sickness bag for a pale teenager in row 28 before the teenager had finished asking. Daniel Park was 26, and he had the particular gift of being very good at understanding what a person actually needed rather than what they said they needed. When the older gentleman in row 31 stopped him to ask about a connection in New York, Daniel did not simply answer the question and move on. He crouched into the aisle, actually physically lowered himself to eye level with the seated passenger, and talked him through it with the patient specificity of someone who understood that, for that man in that moment, the connection was the most important thing in the world. Marcus wrote Rosa Delgado, F.A., Daniel Park, F.A. Service initiated 14 minutes post sign-off, within protocol. Passenger engagement exceptional. Situational awareness strong. He watched Daniel move back up the aisle and watched Rosa work the beverage cart with the efficient rhythm of someone who had made peace with the logistics of a narrow space and learned to be good at them. He watched a woman in row 31 spill her full cup of orange juice during a mild jostle, the kind of micro-turbulence that hits without warning and turns a peaceful drink into a catastrophe of orange liquid across a lap. and he watched Rosa appear with napkins and a fresh cup within 45 seconds, unprompted, with an apologetic smile, as if the jostle had been her personal failing. He added to his notes, Rosa Delgado, post-incident passenger recovery. Exemplary. Through the gap in the forward curtain in the glimpses available from row 35, when the fabric shifted with the airflow, Marcus could see Diana Foster's first-class service. Or rather, he could see what her first-class service had become now that the only audience she cared about was Preston Hale in seat 2A. Preston's champagne glass had been refilled 3 times since Marcus left the forward cabin. Marcus knew this because he had been counting. Preston was audible even through the curtain, a low, confident rumble of conversation punctuated by the particular laugh of a man who has been drinking and is finding himself significantly funnier than usual. Diana was laughing with him. He could hear the practiced feminine delight of it, the performance of a very good audience. She was giving him all of it. The attention, the warmth, the genuine investment in his comfort and satisfaction that she had withheld from every other person on this aircraft who needed it. Ruth Kimball in 4C needed it. She had needed it for 20 minutes by Marcus's count. He had first noted her raised hand at 8:09 when she had tried to catch Diana's attention during the initial service pass. He had watched Diana walk past her. He had watched Ruth lower her hand and fold it in her lap, with the patient resignation of a 72-year-old woman who has spent a lifetime learning not to make a fuss. He was about to note it for the second time when he saw Jonas Strauss in 4A lean across the aisle and speak to her quietly. He watched Rosa Delgado, who had been working the forward section of economy, redirect and bring a glass of water to Ruth's tray table within a minute of being flagged. He watched Ruth take her medication with both hands, slightly shaking, and say thank you 3 times. He wrote Diana Foster, denied timely medical accommodation request elderly passenger 4C minimum 20-minute delay. Water for prescribed medication. Violation of passenger medical protocol. He underlined it. Then he added in a separate line, Rosa Delgado, intervened across section boundary to provide medical accommodation. Not required by protocol. Demonstrates the standard Diana Foster fails to meet. The curtain shifted. He could see through the gap Diana topping off Preston's champagne. The angle of the bottle. The practiced ease of it. The specific quality of her attention. Real attention, the kind she rationed based on calculations Marcus was now documenting with every note. He wrote for 7 minutes without stopping. Times. Names. Actions. Specific violations and specific excellences documented in the same block letters with the same silver pen in the same careful hand. When he was finished, he counted the entries. 11. 3 violations. 8 commendations for Rosa and Daniel. Then he closed the notebook and tucked it back in his breast pocket. Finn Castillo, the teenager on his left, had one earbud in now and one out. The universal teenage signal for optional socialization. He glanced at Marcus with the sideways assessment of a 17-year-old calibrating whether an adult is approachable. He had caught the edge of Marcus's notebook as it went into the pocket. He had seen the block letters at the top of the page. He did not ask, but he looked at Marcus for a moment with an expression that was trying to figure something out and had not gotten there yet. Marcus looked back at him. Not unkindly. You did the right thing before Finn said, not making a big scene up there. Marcus considered that. He said, making a scene uses energy. Writing things down is more efficient. Finn looked at the breast pocket where the notebook had disappeared. He seemed to be turning something over in his mind. Then the turbulence started. It began the way the worst turbulence always begins. Gently enough that your body is not sure yet whether to be concerned. A slow, deep roll. The kind that makes ice in cups clink against plastic walls and causes magazines to slide an inch across tray tables and prompts first-time flyers to grip the armrests with hands that they are trying to make look casual. Experienced travelers read it the way you read a sky. Not with certainty, but with the understanding that what you see right now is not necessarily what is coming. Marcus felt it in his seat before he heard anything change. The particular quality of a 737's movement when the atmosphere is no longer cooperating. He knew this feeling the way a sailor knows a swell. Not intellectually, but physically, in the part of you that has been trained to sense it. He opened his notebook. He noted the time, 20:41. Then the aircraft moved. Not a roll this time. A hard lateral shove, left violent enough that the overhead bins rattled simultaneously and a chorus of gasps swept through the economy cabin like a wave. Then the drop, a sudden lurching plunge downward that was not large in actual distance, but was enormous in sensation. The floor gone for a single terrible second before the aircraft corrected and the engines roared and the world came back. The cup of coffee that a woman in row 27 had been carefully nursing launched off her tray table and hit the seat back in front of her. A child in row 20 screamed. The teenager to Marcus's left grabbed the armrests with both hands, earbuds gone eyes wide. The seatbelt sign illuminated. Every overhead speaker in the aircraft activated simultaneously. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Burke from the flight deck. We have encountered some unexpected rough air. I need everyone seated with belts fastened. Flight attendants, please secure the cabin and take your jump seats immediately." What happened in the economy section of Flight 884 in the 90 seconds that followed was, Marcus would later write in his official report, a demonstration of precisely the training standard the airline claimed to maintain. Rosa Delgado had the beverage cart locked into its floor bracket in one continuous practiced motion. Left arm reaching for the brake lever while her right hand was already gesturing for the passengers near the cart to sit down. She was at her jump seat and strapped into the 4-point harness before the seatbelt sign had finished its second chime. Daniel Park was 8 rows further up. He secured his section with the efficiency of someone who has run this drill until it is not a drill anymore, but simply what happens when the sign comes on. Cart secured. Passengers seated. Commands clear and audible over the noise, seatbelts fastened. Tray tables up. Remain in your seats. 90 seconds. Protocol compliant. Marcus wrote it down. Then he leaned into the aisle and looked forward through the gap in the curtain. Diana Foster was not in her jump seat. She was standing at the forward bulkhead with one hand braced against the cabinet door and the other extended toward Preston Hale's champagne glass, topping it off, as the plane bucked and rattled around her. Preston was laughing, the bold, reckless laugh of a man who has consumed enough bourbon to find turbulence genuinely entertaining rather than genuinely dangerous. Diana was performing delight at his laughter, the champagne bottle tilted with the aircraft's movement. Marcus's pen moved 2041. Diana Foster. Failure to secure cabin during severe turbulence. FAA Regulation 121.317. Remained standing in forward cabin, serving alcohol to passenger during active meteorological event. Active endangerment of crew and passengers. The aircraft lurched again, harder this time. A violent downward drop followed immediately by a hard bank left, the kind of movement that removes any ambiguity about the situation. From the forward cabin came a scream. Then the sound of shattering glass. Marcus was out of his seat. He was not thinking about it, not the way you think about standing up during severe turbulence on a commercial aircraft, which is to say carefully and with awareness of the rules. He was moving the way people who have spent 22 years in cockpits move in a crisis, which is the way you move when the body has been trained until it understands that certain situations do not have time for deliberation. Lydia Morales grabbed his arm. "What are you doing?" The sign. "Stay strapped in. Keep her flat against your chest." His voice was calm and absolute in a way that was not reassuring in the soft sense, but in the structural sense. The kind of calm that tells you the person speaking knows exactly what is happening and has done something harder than this before. He navigated the bucking economy aisle using the overhead bins for balance, not stumbling, not fighting the aircraft's movement, but moving with it the way you move through heavy seas when you understand how the waves work. The curtain was ahead. He pushed through it. The forward cabin. Diana was on the floor of the aisle, right wrist clutched against her chest, face pale with pain. She had been thrown when the aircraft made its hard bank, caught standing no harness, no bracing point solid enough. The champagne she had been pouring was across the carpet and the aisle in broken glass. Preston Hale was pressed into seat 2A with both hands gripping the armrests, no longer laughing the color of a man who has just remembered that he is in a metal tube at altitude and that this is actually not a joke. Marcus knelt beside Diana in one smooth motion. "Are you injured?" Diana looked up. She recognized him instantly. The pain in her face did not diminish. It was real. The wrist was real. But her expression moved through it and found fury underneath. "Get back to your seat. You are violating," she started. "Your wrist." His voice was not loud. It was simply the only thing in the room that had any authority in it. He took her forearm with two careful hands, examined the angle pressed with two fingers to test the joint. Sprained, not broken. But you cannot be in the aisle. She was already pulling away. "How dare you?" He did not argue with her. He lifted her by her uninjured arm, not roughly, not gently exactly, but with the complete purposeful efficiency of someone removing a hazard from a dangerous location, and guided her the 3 steps to the forward jump seat and sat her down into it and reached for the 4-point harness. "Get your hands off me," she hissed, clutching her wrist. "I will have you arrested. I will have you—" Marcus leaned in close. The aircraft shook around them. Another hard jostle, the oxygen masks rattling in their ceiling compartments. His voice dropped to the register he had used in cockpits during genuine emergencies, the register that is quieter than everything else in the room and more present because of it. "Miss Foster, you will stay in this seat until Captain Burke releases the sign. You will not serve another drink. You will not unbuckle this harness. If you do, I will not wait until we land to end your career. I will do it right here." Diana stared at him. Her mouth opened. For the first time in 18 years of absolute certainty, the certainty was not there. Something else was in its place. Not understanding. She was not there yet. But the first crack of real doubt. The first hairline fracture in the wall of her assumptions. "Who are you?" she said. Her voice had lost its authority. She sounded for the first time like someone who genuinely did not know the answer to something important. Marcus stood. He looked at Preston Hale, who was in seat 2, staring at him with an expression from which all swagger and entitlement had been entirely evacuated. The face of a man sitting in a seat that had just become extremely uncomfortable. "I am the man from row 35, Marcus said, "and I have a great deal left to write." He turned and walked back through the curtain. The turbulence hammered the aircraft for another 18 minutes. Marcus sat in his middle seat in row 35, seatbelt fastened, notebook open. His handwriting did not waver with the turbulence. His pen moved steadily across the page. When Rosa came through the cabin after the worst of it had passed, checking on passengers, mopping spills, offering ginger ale with genuine warmth, she stopped at row 35, a fresh cup of water in her hand. Her expression was the expression of someone who takes care of people because it matters to her that people are taken care of. "Are you okay, sir?" she asked. "You and your colleague handled this exceptionally well," Marcus said, "within protocol and beyond it." Rosa looked at him with the mild surprise of someone unused to passengers noticing. "We just follow the training," she said. "You follow the spirit of it," Marcus said. "That is different." She moved on, but she looked back once. Marcus added to his notebook, Rosa Delgado. post-turbulence passenger recovery and empathetic care. Crisis execution exceptional. This is the standard. He closed the notebook. The aircraft smoothed out. The engines settled. The seatbelt sign chimed off for the second time. In the forward jump seat, Diana Foster sat with her sprained wrist in her lap and her heart hammering in her chest, and her mind doing the furious, desperate work of a person who has just seen something they do not understand and is trying to reframe it in a way that makes them right again. She unclipped the harness. She walked to the forward galley. She picked up the interphone. She had 18 years with this airline. She knew how this worked. She knew who got believed. She pushed the button for the flight deck. Flight deck. Captain Burke's voice came through the line. Clipped, stressed the voice of a pilot who has just navigated a zero-visibility squall line and is currently managing air traffic control holding patterns over a congested New York approach corridor. This better be important, Diana. Diana had spent 30 seconds composing herself in the galley before she picked up the phone. She had regulated her breathing. She had arranged her expression. Not that Burke could see it, but the expression helped her believe the performance she was about to give. She was very good at this. She had been good at it for 18 years. "Captain," she said, and she let her voice carry just enough of a tremor that it sounded like controlled fear. "I need to report a Level 2 security situation in the cabin. I am sorry to interrupt during approach preparation, but I am genuinely frightened." The pause on the line was exactly the length of a pilot reassessing his priorities. Level 2. Tell me exactly what happened. A passenger from economy forced through the forward curtain during the turbulence, Diana said. Her voice was steady now, factual, the practiced cadence of someone delivering a clear report. He physically grabbed me, threw me into the jump seat, restrained me with the harness, and threatened me. My wrist is sprained. He claimed to be airline staff, but he is not on my crew manifest under any standard code. He is back in seat 35E. He has been agitated since Chicago. He tried to claim a first-class seat during boarding and became confrontational when I had to relocate him. "He assaulted you," Burke said. "Yes." Her wrist throbbed. She believed it was assault. She had constructed a version of events in which it was assault, and she believed that version completely. How long ago, during the worst of the turbulence? 20 minutes. He went back to economy on his own. I did not want to escalate it alone in the cabin. Another pause. When Burke spoke again, the stress in his voice had reorganized itself into the particular controlled urgency of a captain managing a genuine security situation. Understood. I am declaring an incident with JFK Tower. There will be Port Authority officers at the gate the moment we are powered down. You did the right thing calling it in, Diana. Do not engage with him again. Keep the flight deck door secured. Thank you, Captain, she said. She replaced the interphone in its cradle. The forward galley was quiet. The champagne tray was still on the counter. She had not cleaned it up yet. The broken glass had been swept by instinct when she came back through, but the tray was still there with the bottle and the empty flutes. She did not look at it. She looked instead at the forward boarding door at the jet bridge waiting on the other side, at the imagined scene of a Port Authority officer emerging from it and walking the length of the aircraft to row 35. She imagined the expression on Marcus Webb's face. She imagined him being escorted out. She imagined 18 years of authority restored to their proper place. The smirk that crossed her face was small and controlled, the expression of a woman who has run the calculation and satisfied herself that the outcome is correct. Safety is my priority, she would say when the officers came. I could not allow him to remain on the aircraft. I was protecting my crew and my passengers. She believed it. That was the most important part. She had told herself the story so many times in the last 20 minutes that she believed all of it. In row 35, Marcus Webb sat with his notebook closed and his eyes directed at the window. He was not looking at anything. He was listening to the change in the engine pitch that told him they were beginning their descent. He was thinking about the international command flight tomorrow morning. He was thinking about the 300 passengers on that manifest who needed him rested and present and undistracted by the events of this evening. He did not know Diana had just called the flight deck. He had no way of knowing. It did not matter. He had written everything down. Camila Reyes in seat 3C was still live. She had been live for 49 minutes. Her viewer count had reached 14,000 and was climbing with each descent announcement. She was no longer narrating. She had gone quiet, just holding the phone and watching the forward curtain because her instincts told her that something was not finished. She was right. Jonah Strauss's post had 61,000 shares. Atlantic Airways' official account had still not responded. 3 journalists from major outlets had sent him direct messages. He had responded to none of them yet because the story was not over, and he knew it. Finn Castillo had his phone in his hand and his eyes on the curtain. The lights of Long Island appeared through the windows on the right side of the aircraft. The grid of them, amber and white, the unmistakable geometry of the city coming up through the cloud cover. The aircraft banked gently left for its final approach. The storm was behind them now. Clear air over New York. A textbook descent. The 737 touched down at JFK and the engines reversed with their familiar roar, and the aircraft decelerated down the runway with 200 pounds of documentation in a breast pocket and 14,000 people watching a live stream, and the entire unresolved weight of what had happened at 35,000 feet now coming to ground. It was 9:48 p.m., 52 minutes after Diana Foster had looked at the man in seat 2A and issued her verdict. The clock had stopped. The account was coming due. The aircraft taxied toward Terminal 4 and the PA system activated. But it was not the standard Welcome to New York announcement. It was Captain Burke's voice, and it was not warm. Ladies and gentlemen, we have arrived at the gate at JFK. However, I am asking everyone to remain in their seats with seatbelts fastened. Local law enforcement will be boarding the aircraft to address a security matter. Please keep the aisles completely clear. The murmur that went through the cabin was not quite panic, but it was adjacent to it. The low wave of alarm that passes through any enclosed space when the word law enforcement is introduced without context. Passengers craned their necks. Phones came up. Eyes moved back and forth between the faces of the people around them looking for clues. In seat 2, a Preston Hale straightened up and looked at Diana by the boarding door with an expression that had more uncertainty in it than his usual expression allowed for. "What is happening?" he said. Diana cradled her wrist and composed her face into an expression of fragile bravery. "Safety is my priority," she said. "I had to make a report." The boarding door latched open. 3 Port Authority officers stepped through it into the forward galley. Leading them was Ray Navarro, 44 broad through the chest, a 16-year veteran of airport security, who moved with the methodical, unhurried efficiency of someone who had handled every variation of this scenario. He did not rush. He scanned the cabin first, both directions. He read it the way experienced law enforcement read rooms, not for drama, but for reality. Diana stepped forward immediately, her performed fragility deployed at full volume. Officers. Thank goodness. The passenger, he is in the rear, seat 35E. He is dangerous. He assaulted me and forced his way through to the forward cabin. Navarro looked at her wrapped wrist. He looked at her face. His expression revealed nothing. "Ma'am, please step back into the galley. We will handle this." He signaled his partners and they began the walk toward the rear of the aircraft. Every passenger pressed back involuntarily as they passed, the boots on the carpet, the tactical vests, the hardware at the belts. Camila had her phone up at eye level now, no longer pretending to be subtle. Her viewer count, 14,000. She was not narrating. The footage was narrating itself. Jonah Strauss's camera was on the officers as they passed row 4. His hands were steady. He did not speak. Finn Castillo had both hands on his phone, filming over the headrest in front of him. The 3 officers reached the rear of the aircraft. The lavatories. Row 35. Sir Navarro said, his voice carrying with practiced authority through the quiet cabin. "Hands visible. Unbuckle your seatbelt and step into the aisle slowly." Lydia Morales pulled Ava against her chest instinctively, her eyes going wide and frightened, looking at Marcus, as if seeing him for the first time and not knowing what she was seeing. Marcus looked at her. His expression was the most deliberate thing about him in this moment. Held steady, composed, communicating nothing that would make the situation worse or scare her further. Then he turned to face Officer Navarro. He unbuckled his seatbelt with one smooth motion. He stood. He stepped into the aisle. He was eye to eye with Navarro, and the expression on his face was not defiance, and not fear, and not the particular hunted expression that the situation seemed to demand. It was simply calm. The deep structural calm of a man who knows exactly what is in his breast pocket and exactly what it means. "Officer," he said, his voice quiet, his baritone steady and impossibly polite. "Before you make a mistake that will require significant paperwork for both of us, I would ask you to look at my federal credentials. They are in the inside breast pocket of my jacket. I will remove them using 2 fingers only with your permission." Navarro studied him. Suspects did not talk like this. Suspects did not use the words federal credentials in a calm baritone and offer 2-finger access as a courtesy. The calculation Navarro ran was fast and experienced. This person is not what I was told he was. "Keep your hands visible," Navarro said. "What exactly is in the pocket?" "My federal inspection credentials and my airline corporate badge." Marcus kept his voice at the same even register. "I will use only 2 fingers. Do I have your permission to proceed?" Navarro looked at his partner, then back at Marcus. A single nod. Marcus reached into his breast pocket with the index and middle finger of his right hand. He pinched the leather trifold wallet and drew it out. He held it up and he opened it and he turned it toward the overhead cabin lighting. The silver star of a Federal Aviation Administration inspector's badge caught the light. Clean, official, unmistakable. Beside it, on a laminated card with a photograph, Atlantic Airways corporate identification. The name in block letters below the photo, Marcus Webb. The title below that Chief Flight Operations Inspector. Federal Flight Deck Clearance. Level 1. Navarro looked at the badge. He looked at the photograph. He looked at Marcus Webb's face. The color did not drain from Navarro's face dramatically. He was a 16-year veteran and dramatic reactions were not part of his professional vocabulary. But something shifted. The certainty with which he had walked to row 35 was no longer in his face. "Chief Inspector Webb," Navarro said. His voice had dropped a full register. "Yes, officer," Marcus said. He lowered the wallet. A breath. Around them, the passengers within earshot had heard the title. The ripple of it moved forward through the cabin. The way important information moves through a crowded space person by person, the content changing slightly with each transmission, but the shape of it remaining the same. Something had just been turned upside down. Sir Navarro said carefully, "We received a report through the flight deck of a Level 2 incident. A passenger from economy was said to have breached the forward cabin and assaulted the lead flight attendant. The report is false," Marcus said. He said it without heat, without emphasis, with the same factual directness he had been using all evening. The lead flight attendant filed it to cover up multiple violations. She is aware I documented during this flight. I was conducting an unannounced undercover line audit. She did not know who I was. She does now." Navarro was quiet for a moment, the professional quiet of someone absorbing new information and adjusting. Then Marcus looked toward the forward curtain. Through it, at what was waiting on the other side. "Shall we?" he said to Navarro. "There is a termination to conduct." The walk forward was the most important walk Marcus Webb had taken on this aircraft. Where the first walk, from seat 2A to row 35, had been the walk of a man absorbing an injustice with quiet dignity. This walk was the walk of a man setting it right. Same aisle, same carpet, same aircraft, but a completely different gravity. Navarro and his partners flanked him, not restraining him, not guiding him, but moving with him, and the difference was absolute and visible to every passenger they passed. In row 12, the man who had shaken his head slowly watched Marcus walk back toward the front, and his expression changed in a way that was hard to name but easy to understand. In row 19, the woman who had looked quickly at the floor when Marcus walked past the first time did not look at the floor this time. She watched him. Her hands were folded in her lap and her eyes were clear. Camila Reyes was no longer narrating her live stream. She simply held her phone and let 14,000 people see what she was seeing. Jonas Strauss kept his camera on Marcus Webb's face as he passed row 4. The expression on Marcus's face, the way he moved, the quality of it. The curtain parted. Marcus Webb stepped into first class. Diana had positioned herself by the forward boarding door with the careful deliberateness of someone staging a scene. Wrist cradled, chin slightly lowered, the expression of a woman who has survived something and is holding herself together through dignity and professionalism. She heard the heavy footsteps approaching the curtain, and she straightened marginally, the final composed adjustment of someone about to receive vindication. The curtain moved. The dark tactical uniforms of the Port Authority came through it. And then Marcus Webb walked through behind them, not in handcuffs. Hands at his sides, easy and natural. Walking beside Officer Navarro, with the unhurried authority of someone who belongs exactly where he is. The expression on his face was not triumph. It was not that kind of expression. It was the expression of a man who has been doing a job all evening and is now completing it. Diana's face moved through several things very fast. Expectation, then confusion, then the beginning of something she did not want to name. She stepped forward anyway because momentum and 18 years of certainty do not stop instantly, even when they should. Officers, she said, directing her voice toward Navarro, her practiced distress deployed with precision. Thank goodness. Is he secured, I will need to file a full statement, and I will require medical documentation for the wrist. Navarro looked at her without any warmth. Ma'am, is this the man you reported as having assaulted you and breached the forward cabin? Yes, Diana said, and she pointed at Marcus, and she felt the gesture leave her hand before she could stop it, even as some part of her was already understanding that it was wrong. He grabbed me. He forced me into the jump seat. He threatened me. The words did not stop because she ran out of them. They stopped because Marcus took one step forward, and the quality of his presence in the forward galley, the gravitational completeness of it, was not something she could talk over. He looked at her. The look was not angry and not cruel. It was the look of a person who sees something clearly and has seen it clearly for a long time and is now simply done allowing it to remain unacknowledged. My name is Marcus Webb, he said. His voice was the same voice he had used in row 35 in the aisle during the turbulence from the moment he had first sat in seat 2A, even, unhurried, carrying the same absolute quality it had always carried, which Diana had interpreted as passivity, and which was in fact the opposite of passivity. I am the Chief Flight Operations Inspector for Atlantic Airways North American Division and a commissioned inspector for the Federal Aviation Administration. I have been conducting an unannounced undercover line audit on this flight since before it pushed back from Gate K-17 in Chicago. The color left Diana Foster's face in the specific way of something structural failing. Not a blush or a flush, but a genuine draining, as though the foundation of something had given way, and the surface had not yet had time to collapse, but was already hollow. Her eyes went to the navy sweater, the worn loafers, the charcoal duffel now resting at Marcus's feet. Her mind ran the calculation that it had refused to run all evening, and arrived at the answer that had been available to it for 2 hours. "You," she said. Her voice had no authority left in it. The word came out very small. "You were in an economy sweater." "I was in row 35, Marcus said, taking notes. He reached into his breast pocket and withdrew the black moleskin notebook. He opened it to the first page. The precise block letters, the times, the names. Dense, careful, complete. He began to read. At 19:08, he said you approached a confirmed ticketed passenger in seat 2A and told him he was in the wrong section. You did not examine his boarding pass before doing so. You assumed. Preston Hale, still in seat 2A, had become completely still. The bourbon-fueled confidence was entirely gone. He was watching what was happening in the galley with the expression of a man watching a building come down and being aware for the first time that he was inside it. At 1914, Marcus continued after being shown a valid digital boarding pass, confirmed by gate scanner at K17. You fabricated a double booking that does not exist in Atlantic's reservation system. You used that fabrication to displace a deadheading crew member who had been assigned to that seat by Atlantic Airways scheduling in order to give his seat to a passenger who expressed a preference for the window. His voice did not rise. Every word was a document. At 1931, you denied an elderly passenger in seat 4C timely access to water for prescribed cardiac medication. She had made the request 15 minutes prior. You passed her twice without acknowledging it. Ruth Kimball in 4C sat very still. At 20:41, Marcus said, and his voice dropped to something quieter and more absolute during a documented severe meteorological event, with the seatbelt sign illuminated and the flight deck having issued a direct instruction to secure the cabin and take your jump seat. You remained standing in the forward aisle. You were serving alcohol to a passenger. You did not comply with safety regulations, and you were in active violation for the duration of the worst turbulence this flight experienced. You endangered your own life, the lives of the passengers in the forward cabin, and the safety of this flight. Diana had her hand against the galley wall. She needed it there. "I was providing premium service," she said. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Mr. Hale is Platinum Elite. There is no loyalty tier," Marcus said quietly, "that supersedes a direct flight deck safety command and federal safety regulation. Miss Foster." At that moment, the reinforced cockpit door unlatched and opened. Captain Owen Burke stepped through it. Tall, graying at the temples, the stress of the approach and the holding pattern and the incident declaration written in the set of his jaw. He took in the scene in front of him. The officers, Marcus, Diana, against the galley wall, and his expression moved through confusion toward a recognition he clearly was not expecting. His eyes landed on Marcus. Something shifted in his face. Not just recognition, but a specific quality of it. The recognition of someone you know and did not expect to find here in these circumstances dressed like this, Marcus Burke said. His voice was careful the way you are careful with something important. He looked at the charcoal duffel, the navy sweater, the moleskin notebook. "What on earth are you doing here? I had you on a later positioning flight." "Hello, Owen," Marcus said. He allowed himself for the first time a slight warmth in his voice. "I was on this one. Your lead flight attendant determined that I did not belong in my assigned seat and relocated me to row 35. Burke turned to Diana. His voice had gone to a register that was quiet in the dangerous way, the way of a person who is controlling something very large very carefully. "Diana, you downgraded the Chief Inspector of Operations, and then you called me on the interphone and declared a Level 2 incident. About the Chief Inspector." Diana had begun to cry. Not the performed distress she had deployed for the officer's arrival. This was different, the actual crying of someone who has lost something and knows it and cannot stop the knowing. "Please," she said. 18 years. I did not. I made a mistake. I did not know who he was. Marcus looked at her. His expression was not unkind, but it was clear. You did not make a mistake, he said. His voice was the same voice it had always been. Steady, unhurried, the voice of someone with nothing to prove and no need to raise it. A mistake is forgetting an announcement. A mistake is a cold meal. What you did tonight was a sequence of deliberate choices. From the moment you looked at a man in seat 2A and decided before you spoke a single word to him or examined a single document that he did not belong where he was sitting. And when the consequences of those choices began to arrive, you filed a false report with your captain and directed 3 federal officers to row 35 to arrest an innocent man. He let that sit for a moment. Then he turned to Navarro. Officer, filing a false security report on a commercial aircraft is a federal offense. So is filing a false assault report with law enforcement. I believe both apply here. Navarro had been watching this the way a professional watches something significant. Quietly, thoroughly. He nodded once. He stepped toward Diana. He unclipped the zip-tie restraints from his tactical vest. Ma'am, he said, turn around, please. You are being detained pending a federal investigation. Diana did not fight it. The 18 years of absolute certainty had nothing left in them. She turned and Navarro applied the restraints, and she was walked off the aircraft between 2 officers without another word. The champagne tray was still on the galley counter. One flute had a ring of red lipstick on the rim. In seat 2, a Preston Hale sat in the silence that followed and stared at nothing. The economy cabin had begun to deplane row by row with the contained, controlled chaos of 200 people, simultaneously trying to retrieve overhead items and find their phones and remember which bag was theirs. The first-class section was clearing. Preston Hale moved toward the boarding door with his designer carry-on held in front of him like a shield. Head down, chin tucked. The walk of a man hoping that if he makes himself small enough, the room will forget he was ever large. Mr. Hale. 2 words. Marcus's voice. Not loud. Preston stopped the way a physical object stops when it meets resistance. Instantly, completely. He turned. Up close without the bourbon and the entitlement inflating him, Preston looked considerably smaller than he had in seat 2A. He was a man in a rumpled, expensive suit trying to find something to do with his hands. He managed a smile. Weak, thoroughly humiliated, the smile of a man attempting charm with nothing left to back it up. Look, I want to be clear. I did not know who you were. I just wanted the window seat. She offered it to me. I was not trying to start anything. I know you wanted the window seat, Marcus said. His voice was even. That is not why we are speaking. You were publicly intoxicated on a commercial aircraft. You used a racially loaded remark toward a fellow passenger. You watched a flight attendant violate a direct flight deck safety command during severe turbulence so that she could pour you another drink, and you encouraged it. You were complicit in every escalation of this evening, and your explanation for all of it is that you did not know who I was. He let that sentence stand for a moment by itself. The identity of the person you wronged, Marcus, continued, does not determine whether the wrong occurred. Do you understand that Preston said nothing? He understood it well enough to know there was no good answer. Marcus reached into his breast pocket. Not for the notebook this time. He did not need the notebook for this. I am exercising my authority as Chief Inspector to revoke your Platinum Elite status effective immediately. The violation of our passenger code of conduct tonight provides full grounds. He looked at Preston with the specific clarity of a man who is not enjoying this, but is not going to pretend he is not doing it. Additionally, this flight was booked on a corporate fare from Apex Capital Group. A full incident report, documenting the public intoxication, the interference with crew during a safety event, and your conduct toward a fellow passenger, will be in the hands of Apex Capital's compliance office by 9 a.m. tomorrow. The blood left Preston Hale's face in a way that had nothing to do with the champagne wearing off. The lost upgrades were nothing. The compliance report was everything. The kind of everything that ends careers in a specific and irreversible way. He opened his mouth. He closed it. Marcus pointed toward the boarding door. "The jet bridge is that way, Mr. Hale." Preston Hale picked up his carry-on. He walked off the aircraft without another word, and Marcus made no note of his departure because some consequences are complete enough to document themselves. The first-class cabin had gone quiet. Captain Burke stood near the galley, his hand rubbing the back of his neck in the exhausted way of a man who has completed a genuinely difficult flight and is now accounting for everything it contained. From the rear of the aircraft, carrying black trash bags and moving with the particular tiredness of two people who have been working for 4 hours and are now managing the end-of-flight cleanup, came Rosa Delgado and Daniel Park. They were talking quietly to each other as they came through the curtain. They saw the officers. Navarro had stayed while his partners escorted Diana, and they saw Captain Burke, and they stopped. Rosa looked at Burke, then at Marcus. Her expression was the careful expression of someone who has no idea what has happened in the front of the plane, but can feel the weight of it. "Captain," she said, "is everything all right?" "We saw the officers take Diana off." Marcus stepped forward. He extended his hand. "My name is Marcus Webb," he said. "I am the Chief Flight Operations Inspector for Atlantic Airways. I was in seat 35E tonight." Rosa shook his hand on reflex. Then what he had said landed. Her eyes went to his breast pocket, to the outline of the badge wallet. Daniel beside her had gone completely still. Sir Rosa said carefully, Was there something we—" "No," Marcus said. He opened the moleskin notebook for the last time. The economy cabin service on this flight represented the standard this airline claims to maintain, and sometimes does not. You initiated service within protocol. You secured this aircraft during severe turbulence within 90 seconds of the flight deck order, the fastest I have documented on any domestic audit I have conducted. Your passenger care during and after that event was, he looked at the page, exceptional, empathetic, beyond what the training requires in the best possible way. He closed the notebook. He looked at Captain Burke. "Owen, Diana's international lead position is vacant. I am making a formal recommendation that Rosa Delgado and Daniel Park be transferred immediately to the international wide-body route. I am also recommending they bypass the standard seniority weighting process. They have demonstrated tonight exactly the standard this airline needs more of." Rosa's hands went to her face. A promotion that normally required years of domestic work of patience and seniority and waiting. She could feel the shape of it arriving, and she was not ready for it, and she could not have stopped her reaction if she had tried. Daniel exhaled a sound that was half laugh and completely genuine. The sound of someone receiving news they did not know was possible. Marcus shook each of their hands once more. "You earned it," he said. "Both of you. Now go get some rest. You have done enough tonight." Marcus Webb picked up his slim charcoal duffel from behind the galley counter. Rosa had moved it there quietly without being asked sometime during the flight, and walked off the Boeing 737 for the last time. The jet bridge was cold and bright and smelled of nothing in particular, and the New York air that hit him at the far end of it was clean and sharp and exactly what he needed. He was tired. The specific clean tiredness of a long day that ended correctly. Behind him, somewhere in the digital world he had not once checked during the flight, Camilla Reyes's live stream had reached 14,000 viewers at its peak, and the footage was already being clipped and shared across 6 platforms. Jonas Strauss's post had 180,000 shares and 3 major journalists in his messages and a video that would be on the news by morning. Finn Castillo's video had 400,000 views and was climbing. Atlantic Airways would release a statement before noon. Diana Foster would face a federal hearing within the week. Rosa Delgado and Daniel Park would receive their promotion letters by morning. And a black moleskin notebook full of precise block letter documentation would become the foundation of a mandatory conduct review across every domestic route the airline flew. Not because anyone ordered it with fanfare, but because Marcus Webb had done his job. Justice does not always arrive loudly. Sometimes it comes in a navy sweater with a worn pair of loafers and a silver pen, and it takes its seat quietly in row 35, and it waits, patient and complete and certain, because people who hold genuine power have never needed to announce it. They need only enough time to write it all down. If this story moved you today, we want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell us where you are watching from. And if you believe that quiet dignity always wins over loud arrogance, that doing the right thing, done with patience and purpose, always finds its moment, then please give this video a like, share it with someone who needs to hear a story like this today, and subscribe to this channel so you never miss another one. Every share, every like, every new subscriber helps these stories reach the people who need them most. Thank you for watching. We will see you in the next one.